So in this lesson, we're going to be looking at inequalities. Inequalities, remember, are situations where we use these symbols. The less than, or the less than or equal to sign, or the greater than or equal to, or greater than sign. That's an inequality. So in this chapter, they introduce this topic of inequalities, and we're going to come back to it later on in the chapter. So some things about this section. They're talking about compound sentences. A compound sentence is just simply a situation where we're connecting two different things by the word and or by the word or. So in this first part of our notes, we're going to be looking at what happens when we have the word and. Now, when we have a situation of a compound sentence, so if we have a compound sentence that is using the word and, what we're doing is we're looking for the intersection, or what they have in common for the two sets. So, for example, let's say if as a class we took a test. If I wanted to find out how many girls got an A, I'd be looking at the girls who got A's, the common solutions there, taking just from the girls, so eliminate the boys, sorry guys, and looking from those girls and selecting just those girls that got an A on the test. That would be the intersection of those two individual sentences. Now, looking over here at these graphs, we're going to be graphing inequalities today, so it's really important that you understand something. Whenever we see a greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, meaning the point is included, we use a solid point. That's very important. So you use a solid point anytime it's greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. Now, if it's greater than or equal to, that means that that point at 300 is included, and all the points after it or to the right of it on the number line. So we do an arrow to the right, making it clear that it goes to the right there. Now, if you have just a plain old less than or just a plain old greater than sign, you're going to have to use an open circle. So if we just have less than or greater than, we're going to use an open circle at that point. What that means is the point 400 is not included, but every point less than it is. We use an open circle at 400 and then draw an arrow pointing to the left. Now these are just simple inequalities, but if I have a compound inequality, that means I'm going to combine the two. That's what this is here, where we have 300 is less than or equal to h, which is less than 400. So if 300 is less than or equal to h, that's the same as saying, if we read this backwards, h is greater than or equal to 300. So I'd do a solid point at 300, and I'd start doing my line to the right of it, but I have a distinct stopping point at 400, and it's going to be an open circle because it's not including the point 400. So that's how we'd write this compound sentence. So anytime we see the word and, our graph is going to look something like this, where the points are connected, because we're looking for what they have, what those two sets have in common. Another way to represent the word, or an intersection, is using this upside down U, or an easy way to remember it, if you think of intersection and emphasize the N, the upside down U kind of looks like an N without that little bar there. So that symbol is used for intersection. We don't see that a whole lot in advanced algebra. You'll see that a lot more though when you get into pre-calculus. So it's good to kind of be familiarize ourselves with that symbol now. Now I know that seems kind of picky, but there are two words that we could see that mean two different things. From and between. If I say x is from 3 to 4, what that means that the endpoints are included. That means that we would use, we start with a 3, we end with a 4, and it would be less than or equal to those values. Now a note about writing compound sentences, notice some consistencies here. You always start with the smallest number first, the 300, or in this case the 3. Here we had the 400, here we have a 4. So we always put the smallest number first, the largest number goes last, the variable goes in the middle, and if you do it that way, it's always going to be less than symbols in between those numbers. Then you just have to figure out if it's included or not, where we use less than or equal to, or just a plain old less than. So from means the endpoints are included. Between means the endpoints are not included. So we would refer to the numbers between 3 and 4. We're looking at the decimals there between those two integers. Now, an easy way to distinguish between the two, if you think about it, if you sat between your friends in a movie theater, you're not going to be sitting on their laps, you're going to be sitting in between them. So between means the same thing. You're not going to be including the two chairs either on the left or to the right of you, but you're going to be including the chair that you're sitting in between your two friends. So between means the endpoints are not included. From means they are. So that section there is all about the word and. So and is referring to the intersection, what the points have in common. If we're working with the word or, this on the other hand means either in one or both sets. And we refer to the word or as the union of the two sets. And it's real easy to remember the symbol here. The union starts with U, and so that's the symbol we use to represent the union. That is a U-shaped symbol. So if I wanted to represent the situation that's going on here, we could say L, this is dealing with the length, is less than 2.94, or L is greater than 3.06, or if instead of or, we could use the U symbol there to say that we're referring to the union of those two sets. Either would be fine, using the word or using that union symbol. Okay, but this is what what we just talked about is how we're going to represent our answers for a lot of our questions in our assignment, where we're going to be solving inequalities, and then we're going to graph them on a number line. But before I can graph them on a number line, I need to know how to solve them. Well, the good news is it's really no different than solving a regular equation. The only difference is this. Anytime you multiply or divide each side by a negative number, you flip the inequality. You can add or subtract negative numbers, that's totally fine. You can multiply or divide positive numbers, that's totally fine. But if you multiply or divide negative numbers, then that's a unique situation where we do have to flip the inequality. Let's look at an example. Here we have Penny Nichols. Has $500 to buy stock options at $17.50 per option. She wants to stop buying options as soon as she has less than $100. How many options should she buy before stopping? Well, here's the situation. She has $500. And by the way, don't get hung up on buying stock. If you don't know anything about buying stock, that's totally fine. Just replace it with buying shoes or something else that you're interested in. But in this case, it'd be $500 is what you're starting out with. That's how much money she has available to buy or to spend. And so she's going to spend $7.50 per option. Now, note about variables. You never want to use O as a variable for stock option because it looks too much like a 0. You can use S to represent stock. That's fine, but S sometimes looks like a 5, especially the way I write it because I'm kind of sloppy. So I like to use N to represent the number of shares. You can use any variable you want. I'm not picky about that. So she wants to stop when she has less than $100. It's okay if it's exactly $100, but she wants to stop when it's less than 100. So we use the less than symbol, not less than or equal to. In fact, I think I said that wrong. We're not going to use it when it's exactly equal to 100. We want it to be less than 100. Okay, so now we're just going to solve this equation like we normally would. I'm going to start by subtracting 500 from both sides. When you do that, make sure you don't forget to carry down that negative, because otherwise that would throw off your whole answer. So here I get negative 1750n is less than negative 400. Now you can see that when I divide both sides by negative 1750, since we divide by a negative, that symbol has to flip to be a greater than. And negative 400 divided by negative 17.5 gives me 22.86 as my answer. Now the question says, how many shares does she, or how many options should she buy before stopping? Now if you said 22, your answer would be wrong, because if she stopped at 22 shares, she would still have a little over 100. And plus, if I put 22 in here for n, 22 does not make a true statement. 22 is not greater than 22.86. So my answer would be 23 stock options would be your final answer. And if you wanted to figure out how much money she'd have left, I just put 23 into my original inequality, the 500, minus 1750. Multiply that times the 23 shares she's going to buy. When you do that, you get that she would have $97.50 left over. So let's set this one up together, and then I'll have you solve it on your own. So this one here, it says a ticket agency has 300 tickets for a playoff game. Each customer can purchase 2 tickets. When the agency has 50 tickets or fewer, the agency tries to obtain more tickets to sell. How many customers can purchase tickets before the agency needs more tickets? So if we use C to represent the number of customers here, we would start out with 300 tickets, and each customer can buy 2 tickets. So it's going to be minus 2 times C. And we want to stop as soon as a company has 50 tickets or fewer. The key there is exactly 50 or less than that. So it's going to be less than or equal to 50. So now why don't you guys take and solve this inequality on your own. So pause the video and hit play when you're ready to check your answer. Okay, so you should have subtracted 300 from both sides. Now that's okay, that does not flip the inequality, so it's going to stay a less than or equal to 2 sign for right now, so it's negative 250. Divide both sides by negative 2. And when you do that, you get, now we have to flip the sign, so it's going to be C is greater than or equal to 125. So how many customers can purchase tickets? You'd say 125 customers. Would be your answer. And you could just put 75 into this inequality, the 300 minus 2 times 75 to figure out how much should be left. So you take 300 minus 2 times 75, which is 150, and 300 minus 150 gives you 150 tickets left over. So hopefully that gives you an idea about how to solve inequalities and how to graph them. Again, the key here is that when you're graphing them, if it's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you graph using a solid point. And if it's just less than or greater than, that means a point's not included, so you would use an open point. So good luck on your assignment.